How's it going, everyone? This is Shane with Hotwire Foam Factory, and I just wanted to show a little project that I've been working on here for the past few weeks. One of my favorite games is Old School Runescape. I played it way back in the day in like 2007 when it was just RuneScape, and when they brought it back to Steam, that's when I decided to hop in again. So to kind of pay tribute to it, I made this little sign here, and this is made entirely out of EPS foam, and it's got a built-in speaker. When I press this button, it starts playing the main menu theme. So I'm going to go ahead and show how I built this, and hopefully it inspires you to make something similar. To start things off, I traced over the original logo in Adobe Illustrator and then made an oval backing. I traced over the letters separate because I'm going to cut those out as paper templates that I'm going to use later. With Adobe Illustrator, you can export your file as an SVG, which is useful in CAD softwares. With the file done, I brought it next door to the guys in our CNC shop, and they helped me cut it out on one of our foam cutting CNCs. This can also be done on one of our scroll tables. You would just need to print out your paper template and then cut it out and trace it over your foam. This is especially easy if you're able to print it out on a longer piece of paper, but it can still be done with multiple smaller or regular size sheets. You just need to line them up properly. The advantage to using the CNC is if you're planning on making multiples of whatever your project is, it'll make things a lot easier, a lot smoother. Basically, if this is going to be a production where you're doing a bunch of these, the CNC is the way to go. But if you're just making one for, one client or even just for yourself like I'm doing, this is just for me, using a scroll table will work perfectly fine. So the next part was to cut out the lettering on the top layer. Like I said earlier, I traced the letters out separately, that way I could print them out, cut them out with scissors and an X-Acto knife, and then just trace them over that top layer. Then I cut them out with a 3-inch hot knife, which worked really well. For the inner parts of the A, P, and R, I actually used XPS foam rather than EPS foam because it's more rigid. Since it's such a small piece, having rigid foam made it a lot easier to glue because it's such a small area that it has to go into. The EPS foam was just too soft and it would flex more. For the backing, I wanted it to have a design that's similar to the RuneScape website, the Old School Runescape website, which is how it was back in the day. It's kind of got this leathery texture. So I traced that out, and then I used the precision engraver to engrave the pattern onto it. Next, it was time to glue everything together. I used foam fusion for this just because it gives a really strong foam on foam bond. So I glued it all down, and then I weighted it down overnight just to make sure that it glued nice and strong. From here, I took some sandpaper and just rounded off the edges on that top layer, and then I went ahead and added some detail to the hilt. Specifically with the grip, I rounded that off, and then I actually added some top layers to the handle and the pommel just to give it a bit more depth. Then to finish that off, I added the jewel. Once it was all glued together, I had to cut out the channel for the speaker on the back. The freehand router was the best tool for the job. It made it really easy. It was perfect for creating the shapes that I needed. When you're doing something like this, though, you want to be careful when you have engravings on the front, because that means that the depth of the foam varies. And there were some small parts where I actually cut into the engraved spots, but I was able to fill those in well enough. So it wasn't a huge deal, but that's just something that you want to be aware of. The button needed a nice rigid backing, and the EPS foam was just way too soft for that. You'll end up just pushing a cavity into the foam. So I decided to use the battery pack as a backing. In order to do that, I had to glue it down using Styrogoo because otherwise it would just push right out when you push the button. Even if you kind of created the channel a little bit small so it's sort of a press fit, eventually the foam will kind of bend and warp, and the battery pack will just pop right out. So it's best to just glue it down. One thing I'd recommend at this point, though, is don't make the mistake that I made and start gluing things for the speaker down before you coat it. It's not critical, but being able to remove the speaker and all the systems that go with it make things a lot easier when you're applying your coating. For the coating, I used all-purpose foam coat mixed with bounce. For the first coat, it was mostly bounce. It was about a 3-to-1 ratio. This makes it really viscous and easy to spread across the whole project. The disadvantage you're going to have here is that it's going to be more runny. So especially where gravity is concerned, applying it to the sides, there is a chance that it will actually overnight just drip all the way down. But it's just the first coat. For my second coat, I did about a half and half mixture of all-purpose with bounce. And that still makes it easy to apply, but it makes it a lot thicker. With the coating fully cured, it was finally time to start painting. For the backing, I used a dark brown color which matches the website background color. I mixed it with a little bit of black, and then I applied that to the engravings just to give it a bit more depth. Then I just used the flat dark brown color for the rest of it. For the letters, I used a black color just to give it more depth and have it pop out a bit more. And then for the rune stones, I used sort of a mid-gray. The sword blade was a bit tricky because the silver paint that I got was really runny, and I had to end up mixing it with some of the gray just to get it to apply properly. The jewel is white with a little bit of the silver mixed in. On the original logo, the jewel was white. In newer versions, it's more of like a teal color, but I'm going for the classic original logo. And that's the end of it. I hope this gives you some ideas for your next project. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.